John Moore here, and I am a shamanic practitioner, shamanic healer, spiritual teacher. I live in the state of Maine in the US, the great state of Maine, and I want to talk to you about love. And specifically, I want to talk to you about how all love is self love. And that might sound a little strange, particularly if you're living from your ego, as most people are. Most people have an ego. In fact, probably everybody has an ego of some sort, just many people are not that attached to their ego. So it starts with a little bit of a discussion about the ego, and then I'm going to go into what is love from a spiritual perspective. And then I'm going to talk, it'll be clear. I hope I promise it'll be clear about why all love is self-love. So first of all, we have this thing called an ego. And the ego is our sense of self as a separate identity, as a separate being. When I say me, I think of this body, I think of my name, I think of the labels that I gave myself at the beginning, I think of all of these things. I have all of these beliefs about who I am. I also have lots of stories about who I am. I was born in such and such and such and such, and I live here and this and that. And those are stories. True or not, they're just stories about who I am. Ultimately, at a spiritual level, none of that is true because it's all changing. And one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Lester Levin, said that only things that don't change can be true. So if I say I am this body, well, tomorrow even as we speak, a number of the cells in this body are dying and new ones are being created, and the state of the body changes. Someday this body will die. Okay. Um, very dramatically, I had an amputation of my foot when I was 18 months old. Did that part of me, is that part of me gone? Am I still me? Of course I am. And spiritually, I believe, as many do and have experienced, that consciousness goes on even after the death of the body, even after the death of the mind, which is a bunch of processes we sometimes associate with the brain. So being associated with the body, being associated with your name. So beginning, I talked about my name being John Moore, but my kids call me dad, and I'll answer to that too. Which one of those is who I am? Neither. They're labels. They're labels. My name label is the one my parents gave to me. My dad label is the one my kids use for me. Other people might call me different things. When I was teaching martial arts, sometimes people called me sensei, which is a Japanese title that, basically means teacher. So which one of those are me? None of them. And the way they're used changes over time. Someone that I cut off in traffic might have some very colorful names for me. Okay, so the ego has several functions, but its main function is to protect this body and mind, is to keep this body and mind safe. If I think this is who I am, if I think this body and this mind, if I think my thoughts are who I am, I'm going to protect them, because the thought of non-existence, the thought of an existential threat of any kind, is something I'm going to take care of this. Now, there's a reason, and we'll get into it in this video. There's maybe another video why I have a body and mind. And the ego has a job to protect that, and it does a pretty good job. But the way that it does that is not always to my liking, right? It's not always to our benefit to be completely identified with our name or our body or these stories that I have about myself. Stories like I'm not good at math, or I'm a lousy kisser, or I don't know if either of those things are true. You'd have to ask somebody else. But if I identify with those things, it can cause me pain, because attachment is what causes suffering. This is something the Buddha talked about. Okay, so my attachment to my ideas, to my stories, to my identity, to my ego this causes suffering. The other thing that attachment to the ego does is it removes me from understanding, from experiencing the idea that I am one, that I'm interconnected with the rest of the universe, with everything there is. I'm a part of Source, and so are you. We're both part of the same divinity, the same source, the same God, the same universe, whatever label you want to put on that, what that we are. And underneath it all is pure beingness, pure consciousness, pure existence. That's who we really are. So, with that in mind, when we have a conversation, you and I, um, we are beingness talking to itself, right? Because if we are all the same thing underneath, I may be using this body that is separate from the body, that you are experiencing as you, but beingness is using both bodies to have a conversation. I know it's a little twisty, it's a little mind bending. Bear with me. At certain levels of spiritual awakening, one can have what's called a non dual experience, which is an experience. Non dual means not two, right? Of not subject and object, or you and somebody else, or me and other. Everything is one, everything is one process. At deeper levels of spiritual awakening, one experiences being the universe just playing out through a single set of eyes, a single body, whatever, but almost observing the body and mind going through its motions, doing its thing, but somewhat detached from that. And that disillusion of ego is a big part, or disillusion of the attachment to ego is a big part of spiritual awakening. So when I am loving, when I love you, or I love my children, or I love my cat, or my whoever, or whatever I love, that is self love. But let's talk about love for a second. Let's talk about what I mean by the word love. And I'm going to use something that I call observable qualities of source. Source is a word I like to use for God or the universe or whatever, because it just has less baggage. When I say the word God, you might have thoughts about that. You might attach that to, a guy with a beard living in the sky, or, some other deity, or you might have had bad experiences with religion and reject that concept, of the anthropomorphic God. I just want to use some neutral language here and talk about source, the source, the consciousness out of which all things spring and exist. So let's talk about love as being a base state of source, being a base state of what you are at your very core. Your beingness is love. Why is that? Well, let's talk about what love is. Love is not frequently what we think of as this romantic love exists is fine. There's lots of, hormones and good feelings and all kinds of stuff that are involved. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with loving my children. There's nothing wrong with loving a cat. There's nothing wrong with loving cheeseburgers. Love is a weird word in English because in Persian, for example, there's something like 85 words for love. We have a love in English, which sometimes means I like you a whole lot until you do something that ticks me off. Or I really, really am fond of cheeseburgers, so I love cheeseburgers. But real spiritual love can be broken down to one thing, and that is approval. Um, Approval or acceptance. They're not two separate things, really. So, what does the universe do? What, underneath it all, the universe holds all experience. And the universe doesn't say one experience is better than the other, one experience is okay, and one is not. So, this consciousness that we are underneath it all allows for everything, in your experience to arise. When we reject that, we're pushing parts of the universe away. When I reject another person because I don't like what they did, or I don't like how they dressed, or I don't like the language that they speak, or the color of their skin, or whatever, I'm rejecting myself. I'm pushing part of myself away when that happens, because the experience of that person is arising in my consciousness. Does that physical body that belongs to that person that I'm seeing over there exist? It's not that important a question. It really isn't. Whether it does or it doesn't, my experience of it is all I have. But that experience arises in me, in my consciousness, things that I decide I don't like, or things I decide I like, or things um, that smell bad to me, or things that smell good to me, or all of that arises in this beautiful thing that we call consciousness. And for me, when I point to me, I'm talking about at this point the individualized experience of consciousness that is living out through this body and mind. And so rejecting any part of that experience rejects myself. So when I accept, when I approve of, then I am approving of parts of myself. And that's an important step in finding peace, in finding bliss, in finding joy, and finding spiritual awakening. Now, I can almost hear what some people are thinking or saying or shaking their fists at their computer monitor and yelling at me at this moment and saying, well, what about that person that hurt me or traumatized me or abused me or whatever? Um, being loving doesn't mean that we accept terrible behavior towards this body and mind, right? Yes, there's space for it to arise in our consciousness, but that beingness that's on the other side of that behavior, we accept them just as they are. That doesn't mean we let people harm us. Your discernment doesn't go away. This is, if that's a feeling that you have, and I've been there, that's a lie that your ego is telling you to keep from letting go. Ego wants you to hang on to it. It will make you feel like you're going to die if you let go of your ego, and that's not true. You don't die. There's a hint. Nobody ever really dies, right? Our beingness is what we are. It is timeless, it's formless, it's unborn, undying, unwoundable, all of those things. However, we have chosen to have these experiences, and we can experience deep levels of peace and bliss, but not while we are rejecting important parts of ourselves. Okay. So what do we do? What do we do about this? What do we do? These people in our lives, they do crappy stuff to us, right? There are people out there that do horrible things, that cause pain. Well, again, remember that pain, the suffering of the pain is caused by the attachment or the aversion to the event, the person, the whatever. Yeah, there's trauma. I come from into spirituality from a background of trauma, very severe trauma that I, you know, worked on for a good long period of time. Um, have I accepted? Have I created loving feelings towards those at whose hand I experienced the trauma? Yeah, I mean, I'm not done. I'm never going to say that I'm done. There is no done. There's no final stage. There's no big boss to conquer if you're a video gamer. There's nothing like that. There's no, ultimate stage. It just keeps going and it keeps getting better and better and better. So, one of the things that I haven't mentioned really, and I'll do an entire video about this in the future, is forgiveness. Forgiveness is a part of, it's an important aspect. And again, it's not letting the other person off the hook. It's not letting that person back into your life that caused you pain. It's letting go of the heavy, negative, emotional charge that you feel like you have to keep to be safe. You don't have to keep it to be safe. If I'm not sitting here viscerally afraid of getting run over by a bus, um, I still am not going to go outside and cross the street in front of an oncoming bus. I don't lose my mind. I don't lose my ability to think and be safe if I give up fear, the fear of the bus. I do not allow people who have abused me in my past back into my life, even though I work through giving up the heavy negative emotional charge that keeps me in ego, that keeps me feeling separated, that keeps me out of love, that keeps me out of bliss. When you're holding on to that stuff, you're and I know it's hard to let go. I know, very hard to let go of, but it can be done, and you're really only punishing yourself when you're not letting go. So think about that, think about forgiveness, think about being loving, which is just about how you feel. It's not necessarily about forgetting that, oh, this person, did something to me in the past and I just, I love them, I'm going to let them back in. No, it's just about accepting people as they are, accepting beings as they are, approving of them, not rejecting them, but you can still be wise, you can still be smart, you can still protect yourself, protect this body and mind. You're still using it, right? So that's a little bit about being loving and how all love is self-love. And underneath it all love is divine love. If you're experiencing what is truly love, that is a reflection of the divinity that is within you. That is who you really are and who you are connected to when you spiritually awaken. I hope that's helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Seems weird talking about spiritual topics and then subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's fine if you do or don't. I love and accept you either way. And I will talk to you real soon.